scholars. Today, we're going to talk about English 3, which, in the past, like when I was in high school, was usually linked with United States history. It reviewed the foundational documents like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. It included the major literary movements like the Romantic movement, Transcendentalism, the Modern movement, and the Postmodern movement. Students learned American history and literature through the lens of the authors of the past. But there's a problem with this, because they were all white men. There was very little balance in the point of view. For example, the first text we are going to read is from On Plymouth Plantation, written by William Bradford. It describes the brave Christian pilgrims that sailed across the treacherous ocean in the Mayflower and conquered the untamed wilderness while dealing with the savage Indians. You can see the problem, right? In the past few years, teachers have realized that we need to teach English differently. We try to provide balance by including many points of view. We include older texts and newer texts. Another change is focusing on critical thinking and more difficult texts. Research shows that if students only read easy texts, that they don't learn as much. For example, if you play a game on the same level over and over again, you'll never be ready for the final boss fight. It's also really boring. So let's take a look at the history behind our first text. On Plymouth Plantation is an important look into the lives of the first British colonists. They became known as the Pilgrims, but they called themselves Puritans because they wanted a more pure and less corrupt version of Christianity than England. Many Americans take great pride in being a descendant of the Mayflower. In fact, my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was on that ship, Deggery Priest. He was one of those guys that didn't make it through the first winter. Of course, the more research I do, the more suspicious I am about my father's claim, which of course proves my point about Americans being super patriotic about their history. Some people tie it to the very core of their identity. So when you point out their ancestors weren't perfect heroes, people get very, very angry. The Pilgrims are the ones that gave us Thanksgiving. They landed on Plymouth Rock, which probably wasn't a rock, but a beach, although they were actually heading to Virginia. They landed in November of 1620. There were plans to celebrate the 400th anniversary this year, but they've pretty much been canceled. Thanks, Corona. As we read the text, you should remember that it is almost as old as Shakespeare, and so many of the words and the grammar Bradford uses are archaic. It means we don't use them anymore. Many times, you can guess what the word or phrase means by the sentence around it, using context clues, or by the word roots. And that requires thinking. Lots of critical thinking. This text is hard, but it's supposed to be. If you can read this, then you can pretty much read anything. It's important to chunk difficult reading. That means to cut it into smaller pieces and try to understand it. before putting it all together and analyzing it. It does mean, however, that you need to read it over and over again. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to read it and reread it and read it again until you're probably sick of reading it. And then we're going to ask the hard questions, like, why is this dude so racist? And why do so many Americans think of these people as heroes? Until next time, stay safe and stay creative.